I didn't mean to ruin his life. That's the part that still messes with me. If you asked Henry, he'd probably say I saved him. And for a while, I think I actually believed that too. It started the night he showed up at my door looking like he hadn't slept in days. I remember opening it and just freezing for a second. Henry was always put together, clean-cut, confident, the kind of guy who somehow made even a hoodie look intentional. But that night? He looked wrecked. Red eyes, messy hair, same clothes he'd probably been wearing since yesterday. "Hey," he said, voice low, like he wasn't even sure he should be there. I stepped aside immediately. "Yeah, of course. Come in." He didn't say anything else at first. Just walked in, dropped his bag by the couch, and sat down like his body finally gave up holding itself together. I closed the door and leaned against it for a second, watching him. "What happened?" I asked. He let out a dry laugh. "Emma happened." Ah. That explained everything. Henry and Emma had been together for almost 2 years. Everyone thought they were solid. Honestly, I thought they were going to end up married. He talked about her like she was permanent. "Did you guys fight?" I asked, even though I could already tell it was more than that. He shook his head slowly, staring at the floor. "She cheated." That hit harder than I expected. Not just because of what happened, but because of how he said it, flat, like he'd already replayed it 100 times in his head. "Damn," I muttered, sitting down across from him. "I'm sorry, man." He shrugged, but his jaw tightened. "Caught her. Didn't even deny it." For a few seconds neither of us spoke. The room felt heavier than usual, like all the air had been sucked out. Then he looked up at me, eyes glassy but not quite breaking. "I didn't know where else to go." That part stuck with me. I didn't know where else to go. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "You're good here. Stay as long as you need." And I meant it. Henry nodded, like he expected that answer, but still needed to hear it. That was the beginning. The first few days were rough. He barely slept. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and hear him moving around, pacing, opening and closing the fridge without actually eating anything. During the day, he'd just sit there, scrolling through his phone, then locking it like he regretted even looking. I tried not to push him too much. Instead, I did the simple stuff. Ordered food. Put on dumb movies. Made stupid jokes that weren't even funny, just to get some kind of reaction out of him. Sometimes it worked. Like one night, we were halfway through this terrible action movie, and I made some comment about how the villain looked like a discount gym trainer. Henry snorted. It was small, but it was the first real reaction I'd seen from him in days. "There he is," I said, pointing at him. "Thought I lost you for a second." He rolled his eyes, but there was a hint of a smile. "Shut up." That became our rhythm. Little moments like that. Nothing big. Just slowly pulling him back. And somewhere along the way, things started to feel different. Not all at once. Nothing obvious. Just small shifts. Like the way he started sitting closer to me on the couch. At first, there'd be space between us. Then one night, our legs were touching, and neither of us moved. Or how he'd look at me when I was talking, not just listening, but really watching, like he was trying to figure something out. I told myself it didn't mean anything. He was vulnerable. I was familiar. That's all. At least, that's what I kept repeating in my head. About a week in, he finally started talking about it. Not just surface-level stuff. The real things. We were sitting on the balcony, late at night. The city was quiet, just the occasional car passing by. Henry had a drink in his hand, staring out into the dark. "I keep thinking I missed something," he said. I leaned back in my chair. "What do you mean?" "Like, there had to be signs, right?" He shook his head. "People don't just wake up and cheat." I shrugged. "Sometimes they do." He glanced at me. "You really think that?" "Yeah," I said. "Or they think about it for a while and just don't care enough to stop themselves." He went quiet after that, processing. I wasn't enough, he said eventually, voice quieter now. That's when I sat up a little straighter. Don't do that, I told him. He frowned slightly. Do what? Blame yourself for someone else screwing up. He let out a breath, like he wanted to argue, but didn't have the energy. It's just hard not to, he admitted. I studied him for a second, then said, You gave 2 years to someone who didn't respect you. That says more about you than it does about her. He looked at me then. Really looked. And something about that moment lingered. Thanks, James, he said quietly. That was the first time I felt it. Not just concern. Not just friendship. Something heavier. Something I probably should have paid more attention to. After that night, things shifted faster. Henry started sleeping better. Eating more. Even going out with me sometimes. Nothing crazy, just grabbing drinks or walking around the city. But it wasn't just that. It was the way he started depending on me. Not in an unhealthy way. Just, consistently. If something reminded him of Emma, he'd come find me. If he was having a bad night, he'd sit next to me without saying anything, like my presence alone helped. And I didn't push him away. If anything, I leaned into it. One night, he came into my room without knocking. I was lying in bed, scrolling on my phone. You up? He asked. I glanced over. Yeah. What's up? He hesitated for a second, then walked in and sat on the edge of my bed. Can't sleep, he said. I shifted up against the headboard. You want to talk about it? He shook his head. Not really. There was a pause. Then he looked at me. Can I just stay in here for a bit? I should have said no. Or at least, I should have thought about it longer. But instead I just shrugged. Yeah, man. You don't have to ask. He nodded, then laid back next to me. At first, there was space between us. Same as always. But I could feel it. That tension. The kind that doesn't say anything out loud, but says everything anyway. And when his arm brushed against mine, neither of us moved. That was the moment things really started changing. I just didn't realize yet how far it would go. Or how badly it would end. I should have seen it coming. Looking back, it wasn't subtle. It just didn't feel dangerous at the time. That night he laid next to me, neither of us said much. The room was dark except for the faint glow from my phone screen, and eventually I just locked it and set it on the nightstand. Sorry, Henry muttered after a while. Didn't mean to, invade your space. You're fine, I said. It's just a bed, not sacred ground. He huffed out a quiet laugh. But neither of us moved. We were close enough that I could feel the warmth coming off him. Not touching exactly, but close enough that it would have taken nothing to close that gap. And the thing is, I was aware of it. Every second of it. I told myself it didn't mean anything. That this was just him needing comfort. That I was just being a good friend. But my brain and my body weren't exactly on the same page. You ever think about how weird this is? He asked suddenly. What? This, he said, shifting slightly, his shoulder brushing mine. Me being here. Like this. I swallowed. A little. He turned his head toward me. I could feel it without even looking. Does it bother you? I hesitated just long enough that the silence said more than I wanted it to. No, I said finally. Not really. Another pause. Then quieter. Good. That one word sat heavy in the space between us. After that, neither of us said anything else. At some point, I must have fallen asleep. When I woke up, it took me a second to realize what felt different. Then it hit me. Henry was closer. A lot closer. His arm was draped loosely across my torso, like it had just ended up there naturally. His face was turned slightly toward me, close enough that I could feel his breath. For a second I didn't move. Didn't breathe. My brain was trying to decide what this was. An accident? Just how we shifted in our sleep? Or something else? I should have moved. That would have been the normal thing to do. Instead, I stayed still. Just let it happen. And I hate admitting that part, but it's true. There was something about it that felt right. Comforting. Too comfortable. After a minute, he stirred slightly, his arm tightening for a second before loosening again. Then his eyes blinked open. We just looked at each other. No panic. No immediate pulling away. Just quiet awareness. Hey, he said softly, like we weren't in a situation that probably needed explaining. Hey, I replied. Neither of us mentioned the arm. Or the fact that neither of us had moved yet. It stretched for a few seconds too long before he finally shifted back, clearing his throat as he sat up. Sorry, he muttered, running a hand through his hair. Didn't realize. It's fine, I said quickly. Too quickly. He glanced at me, like he noticed that. Then he nodded and stood up. I'll make coffee. Yeah, I said. Cool. And just like that, it was over. Or at least, that's what it should have been. It wasn't. If anything, that moment made everything worse. Because now we both knew. There was something there. Unspoken but real. And once you notice something like that, you can't really go back to pretending. Over the next few days, the tension didn't disappear. It grew. In small ways at first. Longer eye contact. More casual touches that didn't feel entirely accidental anymore. The kind of silences that felt loaded instead of comfortable. And then there were the looks. Henry had started looking at me differently. Not all the time. But enough. Like he was thinking about something he wasn't saying out loud. And yeah, I was doing the same thing. It all came to a head one night after we'd been out drinking. Nothing crazy. Just a couple of beers at a bar down the street. But Henry had a little more than usual. Not wasted. Just looser. We got back to the apartment, and he immediately kicked off his shoes and dropped onto the couch. Man, he said, dragging a hand down his face. I needed that. I laughed, tossing my keys onto the counter. You've been saying that a lot lately. Yeah, well. He looked up at me, something softer in his expression. You've been helping a lot lately. There it was again. That look. I leaned against the wall, crossing my arms. That's what I'm here for. I know, he said. That's the problem. I frowned slightly. What does that mean? He sat up a little, elbows resting on his knees. It means, he exhaled, shaking his head. I don't know. I just. He stopped himself, like he wasn't sure how to finish that sentence. I pushed off the wall, stepping closer. Henry. He looked up at me. And for a second, everything went quiet. You can just say it, I said. His jaw tightened slightly, like he was fighting with himself. Then, I think about you a lot. That hit harder than I expected. I didn't respond right away. Didn't trust myself to. He let out a breath, like he just crossed a line he couldn't uncross. Not like. He started, then stopped, clearly realizing that wasn't true. I mean, yeah? Like that. My heart was beating way too fast. Henry. I know, he said quickly. I know how it sounds. I didn't plan it, okay? It just happened. I should have shut it down right there. That would have been the right thing to do. The safe thing. Instead, I asked, what exactly are you thinking about? The second the words left my mouth, I knew I'd made things worse. Because his expression changed. Not confused. Not unsure. Clear. About what it would be like, he said quietly. A pause. With you. And that was it. That was the moment everything crossed a line we couldn't come back from. I should have stopped it right there. That was the clean exit. He said it. It was out in the open. I had every chance to shut it down, laugh it off, draw a line, whatever. Instead, I just stood there, looking at him. And the worst part? I wasn't shocked. Not really. Because somewhere deep down, I'd already felt it building. Every glance, every accidental touch, every quiet moment that lasted just a little too long. This wasn't sudden. We just finally said it out loud. What it would be like, I repeated, my voice slower than I meant it to be. Henry nodded barely. His eyes didn't leave mine. Yeah. The room felt smaller. Like the walls had closed in just enough to make everything more intense. I could have taken a step back. I didn't. Instead, I asked, "And?" His jaw tightened slightly, like he was debating how far to go. Then he exhaled. "And I don't think I'd regret it." That did something to me. Something I wasn't ready to deal with. Because it wasn't just curiosity in his voice. It was certainty. And that made it real. "You just got out of a relationship," I said, trying to ground things, even though my body clearly wasn't on the same page. "You're probably just confused." Henry shook his head immediately. "No," he said. "I thought that too at first." He stood up slowly, closing some of the distance between us. "But it's not that." Now he was close. Not touching. But close enough that I could feel the shift in the air. "Then what is it?" I asked, quieter now. His eyes flicked down for a second, just a second, before coming back up to mine. "It's you." That should have been the moment I pulled away. Instead, I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. "Henry, I'm serious," he cut in. "It's not just because of what happened with Emma. I mean, yeah, maybe that's what made me notice it. But it's not the reason." He hesitated, then added, "I feel different around you." There was something about the way he said it that made it impossible to ignore. Honest. Unfiltered. And dangerous. Because I felt it too. I just hadn't said it. "You don't even know what you're asking for," I said finally. It came out rougher than I intended. He didn't flinch. "Then tell me." I let out a quiet, almost disbelieving laugh, running a hand through my hair. "This doesn't stay simple," I said. "You don't just try something like this and go back to normal." "I know," he said. "Do you?" I shot back. "Because if this goes wrong, we don't just lose whatever this is right now, we lose everything." That landed. I could see it in the way his expression shifted, just slightly. But he didn't back off. "Then why does it feel like we already crossed that line?" he asked. "That one hit?" Because he wasn't wrong. We had. Just not physically. Not yet. For a second, either of us moved. Then he said, softer now, "Tell me you don't feel it." I didn't answer. Not because I didn't have one. But because we both already knew. He took that silence as confirmation. Of course he did. "James," he said, stepping just a little closer, "if you don't want this, I'll drop it. I swear. I won't make things weird. I just need to know I'm not crazy." I looked at him. Really looked. And yeah, he wasn't crazy. That was the problem. I exhaled slowly. "You're not crazy." That was it. That was all it took. Because the second I said that, something in him shifted. Like a switch flipped. Not aggressive. Not rushed. Just certain. He closed the last bit of space between us. And this time, I didn't step back. The first touch wasn't dramatic. No big moment. Just his hand brushing against mine. Slow. Intentional. Like he was giving me one last chance to pull away. I didn't. Our fingers stayed there for a second, then laced together. And yeah, that felt different. Way different than anything before. More real. More final. I swallowed. "This is a bad idea," I muttered, even as I tightened my grip slightly. Henry let out a quiet breath, almost like a laugh. "Probably." Either of us let go. He moved first. Not fast. Not hesitant. Just steady. 1 second we were standing there, the next his other hand was on my arm, sliding up just enough to pull me a little closer. Close enough that I could feel his breath again. Just like that morning. Only this time, we were both very aware. Still think this is a bad idea? He asked quietly. I should have said yes. Instead, I said, yeah, and didn't move away. His lips pressed together for a second, like he was holding himself back. Then, okay. And he closed the gap. The kiss wasn't rushed. It wasn't messy or unsure. It was careful. Like we were both trying to understand something at the same time. And the second it happened, everything else disappeared. All the overthinking. All the hesitation. Gone. I felt his hand tighten slightly against my arm, like he needed to ground himself. Honestly? Same. Because this wasn't just curiosity anymore. This was real. And there was no pretending it wasn't. When we pulled back, it wasn't far. Foreheads almost touching. Both of us just breathing. Yeah, Henry said quietly. I let out a shaky breath. Yeah. That was the moment. The exact moment everything changed. Not when he showed up at my door. Not when he laid in my bed. Not even when he admitted it. This was the point of no return. And deep down, I think we both knew it. We just didn't care enough to stop. We didn't talk about it right away. That probably should have been the first red flag. After the kiss, we just stood there for a second, like both of us were waiting for the other to say something that would make sense of it. Nothing came. So instead, Henry let out a quiet breath and stepped back slightly, running a hand through his hair. Okay, he muttered, almost to himself. Okay, I echoed. Neither of us sounded convincing. He glanced at me again, searching my face like he was trying to read something I wasn't even sure I understood myself. This doesn't have to. He started, then stopped. I frowned. Doesn't have to what? I don't know, he admitted, letting out a short laugh. Be a whole thing. That should have been my cue to agree. Keep it simple. Contained. Instead, I said nothing. Because the truth was, it already felt like a whole thing. That night didn't escalate into anything more. We didn't suddenly lose control or turn it into something reckless. If anything, it was the opposite. Careful. Measured. Like we both understood we were standing on something fragile. He ended up staying in my room again. Not even a question this time. We just sort of fell into it. This time, when we laid down, there wasn't that same awkward space between us. It closed almost immediately. Not rushed. Just natural. Like we'd already crossed the line, so pretending otherwise didn't make sense anymore. At some point, his hand found mine again. No hesitation. I didn't pull away. The next morning was different. Not in a bad way. Just heavier. More real. We didn't wake up tangled together like some cliché. But we were close. Close enough that it was obvious something had shifted. Henry was already awake when I opened my eyes. He was looking at me. Not in a creepy way. Just thinking. You good? I asked, my voice still rough from sleep. He nodded, but didn't look away. Yeah, he said. Just thinking. About? He hesitated. Then, about how this is either a really good idea, or a really bad one. I let out a quiet breath. Probably both. That got a small smile out of him. Yeah, he said. Feels like that. There was a pause. Then he added softer. I don't regret it. That part hit. Because I didn't either. And that was the problem. We didn't label anything. No. What are we? Conversation. No rules. No boundaries set. We just kept going. And that's where things started getting complicated. Because without saying it out loud, we slipped into something that looked a lot like more than friendship. We cooked together. Watched movies the same way as before, but now he'd lean into me without thinking, or rest his head back like it was normal. We went out, and he'd stay close. Not obvious enough for strangers to notice anything, but enough that I felt it. And at home? It got harder to ignore. The touches weren't accidental anymore. A hand lingering on my arm a little too long. fingers brushing against my neck when he passed behind me. The kind of contact that didn't need words to mean something. We didn't rush into anything physical beyond that. But the tension? Yeah, it didn't go anywhere. If anything, it got worse. About 2 weeks in, Emma came up again. We were in the kitchen, just messing around, arguing over whether pineapple belonged on pizza. Henry was leaning against the counter, watching me like he had been doing a lot lately. You know what's weird? He said. What? I don't think about her as much anymore. I paused for a second. That's a good thing, right? Yeah, he said slowly. It is. But something about the way he said it felt off. Then what's the problem? I asked. He shrugged. Feels too easy. I frowned. What does? Moving on. I leaned back against the counter, studying him. You got hurt, I said. You found something better. That's not weird. His eyes flicked up to mine. Is that what this is? He asked. Something better. The way he said it wasn't casual. It wasn't a joke. It was a question. And I didn't answer right away. Because I didn't know how to. Before I could say anything, his phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced down at it. And everything changed. His expression shifted instantly. Not dramatic. Just tight. Who is it? I asked. He hesitated for half a second too long. Then flipped the phone over. No one. Yeah. That wasn't true. And we both knew it. That was the first crack. Small. Easy to ignore. But it was there. And once something like that shows up, it doesn't just disappear. I didn't push him on it. Probably should've. But I didn't. Instead, I let it go. Told myself it wasn't a big deal. That whatever we were doing didn't come with expectations. That we hadn't defined anything, so I didn't have the right to question it. All of that sounded reasonable. Logical. Safe. But it wasn't the truth. The truth was, I didn't want to know the answer. Because deep down, I had a feeling I already did. And I knew, if I was right, this wasn't going to end clean. I tried to ignore it. That moment with his phone. The way his expression changed. The way he flipped it over like it suddenly mattered more than whatever we were talking about. I told myself it didn't mean anything. But it stuck with me. Because things between us weren't casual anymore. Not really. Even if we hadn't said it out loud, there was something building there. Something that felt close to real. And that made stuff like that harder to brush off. A couple days passed before it came up again. We were sitting on the couch, same as always. Some random show playing in the background that neither of us was actually paying attention to. Henry was scrolling on his phone this time. And I noticed it again. That same look. Slight smile. Focused. Gone the second he realized I glanced over. Okay, I said, pausing the TV. What is that? He blinked, looking up. What is what? That, I said, nodding toward his phone. You've been doing that all week. He frowned slightly. Doing what? That face, I said. Like you're trying not to look happy about something. For a second, he didn't answer. Then he locked his phone and set it down. It's nothing, he said. Yeah. There it was again. Nothing. I leaned back into the couch, crossing my arms. You're really bad at lying, you know that? That got a small, reluctant smile out of him. I'm not lying. Then what is it? He hesitated. And that hesitation told me everything. Henry. He exhaled slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. It's Emma. There it was. Of course it was. I nodded once, like I expected it. What about her? She's been texting me, he said. Something in my chest tightened. Since when? A few days. I let out a quiet, almost disbelieving laugh. And you didn't think to mention that? He looked at me, a little defensive now. It didn't seem important. Didn't seem important, I repeated. Your ex, the one who cheated on you, is texting you again, and that's not important. It's not like that, he said quickly. Then what is it like? He ran a hand through his hair, clearly frustrated. She just wants to talk. Explain things? I stared at him for a second. And you're answering? That's when he didn't respond right away. And that silence? Yeah. That told me enough. Well, I muttered, shaking my head slightly. It's not what you think, he said. Then explain it to me, I shot back. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks pretty straightforward. She hurt me, he said. Don't you think I deserve some kind of closure? I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. You don't get closure from the person who broke you, I said. You just give them another chance to do it again. That's not fair, he said, his tone tightening. What's not fair is you acting like this is harmless, I replied. It's not. He stood up suddenly, pacing a few steps away. I'm not getting back together with her, he said. That's not what this is. Then why does it feel like you're hiding it? That stopped him. He turned back to me. I'm not hiding anything. Really? I raised an eyebrow. Then why didn't you tell me? He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Exactly. The silence stretched. Thick. Uncomfortable. Finally, he said, quieter. I didn't think it would matter this much. That one landed. Because it meant one of two things. Either he really didn't understand what this, whatever we were, had become. Or he did. And just didn't want to deal with it. I stood up slowly. It matters, I said. He looked at me, something uncertain creeping into his expression. Why? That question? Yeah, that was the problem. Because now we were there. Right at the edge of something we'd been avoiding this whole time. I let out a breath, running a hand through my hair. Don't do that, I muttered. Do what? Act like you don't know. His jaw tightened. Then say it, he said. I hesitated. For half a second. Then, because this isn't nothing. There it was. Out in the open. Finally. He didn't respond right away. Just looked at me. Processing. And what is it? He asked. I let out a quiet, almost humorless laugh. You really want me to define it for you? I want to know what you think it is, he said. I held his gaze. It's more than friends, I said. You know that. A pause. And you don't act like this with someone who's more than friends. His expression shifted slightly. Not defensive this time. Just conflicted. I told you, he said. I'm not getting back with her. That's not the point, I replied. Then what is? I stepped closer. It's that you're still letting her in, I said. While you're here with me. That hit. I could see it. Because there wasn't a good argument against it. For a second, either of us spoke. Then he said, quieter, I didn't think you'd care this much. There it was again. That same line. And something about it finally snapped into place for me. It wasn't that he didn't understand. It was that he hadn't decided. He was still, in between. Between what we were building. And what he hadn't fully let go of. And somehow, I'd let myself become the middle ground. I took a step back. Shaking my head slightly. Yeah, I said. That's kind of the problem, Henry. His expression tightened. What does that mean? It means, I said slowly, I helped you get over her. I paused. Because now I could see it clearly. All of it. And now I'm about to be the next one you're not over. That landed harder than anything else. Neither of us said anything after that. Because we both knew. This was where things started falling apart. After I said it, either of us moved. It just hung there. Heavy. Final. I helped you get over her, and now I'm about to be the next one you're not over. Henry looked like I'd hit him with something real for the first time. Not defensive. Not confused. just stuck. That's not, he started. But he didn't finish. Because he didn't have a better version of it. I shook my head slightly. You don't even know what you want. That's not true, he said, but there was no weight behind it. Then what do you want? I asked. He opened his mouth again. And again, nothing came out. That was answer enough. I stepped back, creating space between us for the first time in weeks. And it felt wrong. Like something that had become normal was suddenly gone. I can't do this if you're still halfway in something else, I said. I'm not, he insisted. You are, I said. Calmer now. Maybe not intentionally. But you are. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. She hurt me, James. I'm not just going to flip a switch and feel nothing. I'm not asking you to, I replied. I'm asking you not to pull me into it while you figure that out. That landed hard. Because that was the truth neither of us had said yet. I hadn't just helped him. I'd stepped into the space she left. And now? That space wasn't as empty as I thought. So what, you're just done? He asked. The way he said it, tight, controlled, told me he wasn't as okay with that idea as he wanted to seem. I hesitated. Because I didn't want to be done. That was the worst part. I don't know, I admitted. But I know this, like this, doesn't work. He looked away for a second, jaw tight. Then what are we supposed to do? That question felt a little too familiar. Because we should have asked it weeks ago. Before things got this far. I exhaled slowly. You figure out what you actually want, I said. And until then. I trailed off. He looked back at me. Until then what? I held his gaze. We don't do this. That was the line. Clear. Simple. And harder than anything else I'd said. He nodded once. Slow. Like he understood. But didn't like it. Okay, he said. Just like that. No argument. No fight. And somehow, that felt worse. The next few days were quiet. Not awkward. Not hostile. Just off. Like something had been turned down between us. We still talked. Still hung out. But the ease was gone. The casual touches? Gone. The late nights in the same room? Gone. It was like we both knew exactly where the line was now. And neither of us wanted to cross it again. But that didn't mean it didn't still exist. I could feel it in the way he'd look at me sometimes. Like he was about to say something, then didn't. Or how he'd linger in the doorway of my room for a second too long before walking away. And yeah, I wasn't exactly unaffected either. It's easy to say. We'll just go back to normal. It's a lot harder when normal doesn't exist anymore. About a week later, I came home later than usual. Work had run long, and I grabbed a drink after just to clear my head. When I walked into the apartment, the lights were dim. And Henry was sitting on the couch. Waiting. I could tell immediately. You've been here a while? I asked, setting my keys down. He nodded. Yeah. Something in his tone made me pause. What's up? He stood up slowly. We need to talk. Yeah. Those words never lead anywhere good. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. All right, I said. Talk. He hesitated for a second. Then, I met up with her. That hit exactly how I expected it to. Still didn't feel great. Of course you did, I muttered. It wasn't like that, he said quickly. I let out a short laugh. You're really sticking with that line, huh? I just wanted to hear her out. And? I asked. Did she give you the magical explanation that made everything make sense? He didn't answer right away. And that silence? Yeah. I knew. She wants to try again, he said finally. There it was. Out in the open. I nodded slowly. Right. She says she messed up, he added. That it didn't mean anything. I looked at him. Does it matter? He hesitated. And that hesitation said everything? Well, I muttered under my breath. It's not that simple, he said. It is, I replied. You either believe her or you don't. He looked frustrated now. You're acting like this is easy. I'm acting like I've seen how this ends, I said. And it's not different just because she says sorry this time. He ran a hand through his hair again. I needed to hear it. No, I said. You wanted to. That stopped him. Because yeah, that was closer to the truth. We stood there in silence for a second. Then I asked, So what now? He looked at me. And for the first time since this started, I saw it clearly. The split between what we had and what he wasn't ready to let go of. I don't know, he said. And that was the answer I was afraid of. Because it meant exactly what I thought it did. He still hadn't chosen. And somehow, I already knew I wasn't going to be the one he picked. I think I knew before he said anything. Not because he looked guilty. Not because he looked happy. Just the way he stood there. Like someone caught between two doors, knowing whichever one he walked through, something behind him was closing. I don't know. That's what he said. But it wasn't confusion. It was hesitation. And hesitation tells you everything you need to know. I nodded slowly, more to myself than to him. Yeah, I said. That makes sense. He frowned slightly. What does that mean? It means, I replied, pushing off the counter. You're still deciding. I just need time, he said. I let out a quiet breath. That's exactly the problem, Henry. His jaw tightened. Why? Because I'm not something you figure out while you're still holding on to her. That one landed hard. He looked away for a second, then back at me. I'm not trying to hurt you. I know, I said. And I meant it. That was the worst part. He wasn't being cruel. He wasn't playing games. He just didn't have clarity. And somehow, that still managed to hurt. So what are you saying? He asked. I held his gaze. I'm saying I'm not an option, I said. Not a backup. Not a maybe. You're not. He started. Then prove it, I cut in. That stopped him. Because proving it meant something simple. Choosing. And he still hadn't. The silence stretched again. Different this time. More final. Then he asked, quieter, If I choose you, would you even trust it? That question caught me off guard. Not because it was unfair, but because it was honest. I didn't answer right away. Because the truth? I didn't know. Not anymore. That's not the point, I said finally. It kind of is, he replied. And yeah, he wasn't wrong. But it didn't change anything. I shook my head slightly. You're asking me to wait while you figure out if you want me, I said. Do you hear how that sounds? His expression tightened. I'm not asking you to wait. You don't have to, I said. That's what this is. That hit. Because again, it was true. He took a step closer. Not all the way. Just enough to feel familiar again. I meant what I said, he said. About you. I looked at him. I know, I said. And it doesn't matter if you can't back it up, I replied. That was it. That was the line everything kept coming back to. Not feelings. Not moments. Consistency. Choice. And he didn't have that yet. For a second, I thought he might say something else. Something that would finally tip things one way or the other. Instead, he just stood there. And that was the answer. Again. So I nodded once. Okay, I said. He frowned. Okay, what? Okay, I get it. Get what? I let out a small breath. You're not ready, I said. And I'm not waiting around for you to be. That one hurt to say. More than I expected. Because a part of me, a very real part, wanted to. James, he started. I shook my head. Don't, I said. Don't try to fix it right now. I'm not trying to fix it, he said. Then what are you doing? He hesitated. And yeah, there it was again. No answer. I grabbed my keys off the counter, more out of instinct than intention. I think you should go, I said. That hit him. I could see it immediately. You're kicking me out? I'm giving both of us space, I replied. This is my place too, he said, frustration creeping in. Then take it, I said. I'll go. That wasn't what he expected. At all. James, that's not what I know, I cut in. None of this is what you planned. Silence. Heavy. Final. For a second, either of us moved. Then I walked past him. And this time? He didn't stop me. That was the last time we were in the same room like that. No shouting. No dramatic ending. Just distance. The kind that builds quietly, and then suddenly feels impossible to cross. I stayed at a friend's place that night. Didn't sleep much. Just kept replaying everything. Where it started. Where it shifted. Where it went wrong. And the answer? It wasn't one moment. It was all of them. Every time I let something slide. Every time we didn't say what this was. Every time I chose to believe it would just work itself out. I helped him get over a breakup. That's how this started. Simple. Clean. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being the one helping. And became the one he had to choose between. And the worst part? He didn't choose. Not really. Because not choosing is still a choice. I just wasn't the one he made. I didn't go back the next day. Or the day after that. At first, I told myself it was just about space. Giving things time to cool off, letting the tension settle into something easier to deal with. But that wasn't really it. The truth was, I didn't know what I'd be walking back into. Henry texted me the next morning. Can we talk? I stared at it for a while. Typed something. Deleted it. Typed again. Deleted that too. Eventually, I just replied, not yet. It wasn't anger. It was self-preservation. Because I knew if I saw him too soon, I'd fold. I'd let the conversation blur the lines again. Let feelings do what they'd already done once, pull me back into something unfinished. And I couldn't do that again. A couple more days passed. Then another message. I made a decision. That one hit differently. I won't lie, my heart actually sped up a little. Because yeah, part of me still wanted it to be me. As much as I hated that. As much as I knew better. I still opened the message expecting, hoping, for something. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I went back to my apartment that night. It felt the same. And not at all. Lights off. Quiet. Like nothing had happened there. But it had. I could feel it in the air. Every memory of the past few weeks just sitting there, untouched. Henry wasn't in the living room. But his door was closed. And the light was on. For a second, I just stood there. Debating. Then I knocked. A pause. Yeah? His voice came from inside. I opened the door. He was sitting on the edge of his bed. And the second he saw me, something in his expression shifted. Relief. Nervousness. Something in between. Hey, he said. Hey. There it was again. That weird, almost normal tone we kept falling into. You said you made a decision, I said. No small talk. No easing into it. He nodded. Yeah. He stood up slowly, like he wasn't sure how close to get. I did. I crossed my arms slightly. Okay. Silence. A few seconds too long. Then, I went to see her again. That wasn't what I expected to hear first. But I didn't interrupt. She apologized, he continued. Like, really apologized. Not just words. He exhaled. She admitted everything, took responsibility. I just watched him. Waiting. And? I asked. He looked at me. And I saw it. The answer. Before he even said it. I think I owe it to myself to try again. There it was. Clean. Clear. Final. I nodded once. Not because it didn't hurt, but because it made sense. In a way I didn't want it to. You made your choice, I said. He stepped forward slightly. It doesn't mean what we had wasn't real. I let out a quiet breath. I know. And it doesn't mean I didn't feel. Henry, I cut in gently. He stopped. Because he knew. This part didn't need explaining. I'm not mad at you, I said. And I wasn't. That was the strange part. No anger. No resentment. Just clarity. You were figuring things out, I continued. I just got caught in the middle of it. His expression tightened. I didn't mean for that to happen. I know. And again. I meant it. We stood there for a second. Both of us understanding something without needing to say it. Then he asked, quieter, Are we okay? That question almost made me laugh. Not in a mean way. Just real. Yeah, I said. We will be. Not we are. Not yet. But eventually. I turned toward the door. Then paused. Hey, I said. He looked up. You didn't waste my time. That part mattered. Because even if it ended like this, it wasn't nothing. None of it was. He nodded slowly. Neither did you. And that was it. No big goodbye. No dramatic last moment. Just an ending that felt exactly like the rest of it. Quiet. Complicated. Real. I moved out a couple weeks later. Not because I had to, but because staying would have kept everything half open. And I needed it closed. I still think about him sometimes. Not in a what-if way. More like understanding. Of how easy it is to fall into something that feels right at the wrong time. Of how helping someone heal can blur into something deeper before you even realize it. And how sometimes you don't lose because you weren't enough. You lose because you were there. In between. I helped a friend get over a breakup. That part's true. What I didn't realize was that I was also helping him find his way back to someone else. And by the time I understood that, I was already the next one he had to get over.